Welcome back, Bird Gang fans, to the Red Phantom podcast, where we'll be talking everything involving the Arizona Cardinals. This is the Red Phantom bringing you my reaction and thoughts about the game against the Buffalo Bills. This episode will focus on the game this last Sunday, as well as the upcoming game against the Rams this Sunday. So let's jump straight into things. Starting off in the first half, everything went amazing for the Cardinals. Offense was clicking and defense was playing strong. The Cardinals had an opening drive touchdown with Michael Wilson on a 5-yard pass to make it a quick 7-0 lead after a very questionable roughing the passer against the Bills. The opening drive for the Bills resulted in a touchdown as Josh Allen would lose the ball off a strip sack by Roy Lopez. The Cardinals would make quick amends to this and make it a quick 10-0 lead, but unfortunately would lose Jonah Williams for the rest of the game on the second drive of the game. The Bills would eventually score a field goal of their own during their second drive of the game, and the Cardinals would quickly respond with a James Conner rushing touchdown to make it 17-3. The Cardinals looked like they were going to dominate this game, but just as quickly as the Cardinals started, Josh Allen and the Bills would answer just as quickly and take the team down to score before the half 17-10 after another questionable call by Zaven Collins for roughing the passer. Going into the second half, everything fell apart for the Cardinals. Josh Allen would end up scoring a touchdown to tie the game 17-17 coming out of the half, and many fans expected the Cardinals to continue playing fast and aggressive. Unfortunately, Bills defensive end Greg Rousseau would end up playing a key role for the Bills defense in this half in stopping the Cardinals offense for 2 consecutive drives. Rousseau would have a sack to end the Cardinals opening drive coming out of the half, as well as a strip sack to end the drive that would put the Bills in prime scoring position that would allow the Bills to take the lead 17-24 after allowing the Bills to score 21 unanswered points. The Cardinals wouldn't score any points in the third quarter and would settle for a field goal early in the fourth, which was answered with another Bills touchdown. DJ Dallas would end up making NFL history as he became the first player to return a touchdown with the NFL dynamic kickoff rules, as he brought the Cardinals back to a 3-point game after a successful 2-point conversion to make the score 28-31. The Cardinals defense then made a big stop to hold the Bills to a field goal, giving the Cardinals a last chance for the game-winning drive. The Cardinals, however, had some disastrous moments in their final drive of the game. Starting off the drive, Michael Wilson dropped a pass from Kyler Murray that would have broken off for a much-needed play for the Cardinals. A few plays later, we have the infamous freeze frame of Marvin Harrison Jr. being wide open for a game-winning touchdown. Now I'll give Kyler Murray some slack here. There's absolutely no way he was making that throw if he wanted to. If you watch the play again, the Bills are rushing 6 guys against the Cardinals. Murray couldn't throw the ball to Harrison or Dortch for the first pump fake because the blitzing slot corner would have knocked the ball out of the air. He then runs around to avoid getting sacked and can't throw to either Michael Wilson on an out route or Trey McBride on the corner route as they're both being covered. So then he goes back to his first option of Greg Dortch and gets a quick 7 yards. The very next play, Dortch ends up getting tripped up on a quick slant to make it 3rd and 10. Then the Cardinals decide to run the ball for 30 seconds left in the game to pick up 3 yards and make it a 4th and 7. And to end the game, the Cardinals decide to launch a 20-yard 50-50 ball to Greg Dortch, who was receiving contact by the defending corner to knock the ball away to end the game. Very questionable no call and even more questionable play calling by Drew Petzing to end the game. So let's start off right away with Marvin Harrison Jr. His total stat line for the game was 3 targets with 1 catch for 4 yards. Let's look back on Anquan Bolden's first game as an NFL debut. He started off the game with 10 receptions, 14 targets, 217 yards, and 2 touchdowns. When you draft a guy that high in the NFL, you have to give him more than 3 targets. And granted, James Conner had a decent game running the ball and catching the ball, because in the first half we were up 17-3 at one point, and everything was looking smooth sailing until that second half started. And I don't know if it was bad play calling or if it was other stuff, but there's absolutely no reason that your number 4 pick should have 3 targets in the game. Like, unexcusable. Like, you can't have that in the NFL if you want to be successful. Marvin Harrison has to get more looks or more targets in this next game against the Rams. Same thing with Michael Wilson. His only catch was the touchdown catch at the very beginning of the game. Our leading receiver was Greg Dortch with six receptions for 47 yards. Our second highest was James Conner with 33. That's unexcusable. Kyler Murray, granted, played decent when Jonah Williams went out because Kevin Beecham just couldn't block for anything. But you have to give him more targets, especially receiver-wise. McBride only had 3 catches up until that last drive where he had 2 catches. Those are your number 1 and number 2 receivers right there with Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride. If you're not giving them more than 7 receptions a game each, there's something wrong. And then to go on with the defense, everything in the first half, like I mentioned, looked great. We had amazing run stops. We had amazing pass deflections here and there. We held the Bills' offense to under 100 yards in that first half. I don't know what happened in the locker room at halftime. I don't know if there was any defensive changes, but literally everything flipped around after halftime. Our only 2 flashes were Zaven Collins and Mack Wilson. Mack Wilson absolutely ran away with this game. He was making plays left and right. Kaiser White was also helping him make plays left and right. Zaven Collins looked like a edge rusher. And granted, he just moved over last year, but that's sad that Zaven Collins is our best edge rusher. And here's a stat that was recently pulled out from the PPF. Arizona Cardinals had a 12% pass rush win rate against the Buffalo Bills. Our pass rush win rate last year was 35%. We are dead last in the NFL with the 12% win rate. Something has to change. And I know last week I said Monty Ossenfort wasn't going to make a trade to boost our edge rush, but something has to change. If we don't get any edge rush or any pressure against the quarterback, we are not going to win a game. Granted, next week, the Rams aren't going to have Puka Nacua. They're not going to have their starting offensive tackle. So maybe something might change. But if we're playing against another scrambling quarterback like the Commanders with Jaden Daniels, we are going to get destroyed at the line of scrimmage. And then, like I had mentioned, the Cardinals defense played great for that first half, and then everything fell apart. James Cook had 19 carries for 71 yards. I couldn't tell you what the yards per carry after the second half was, but he was essentially running over the Cardinals defense left and right in that second half. Same thing with Josh Allen. He had 9 carries for 39 yards and 2 touchdowns. How? A quarterback shouldn't be rushing that much on a defensive line like that. Unless you're Lamar Jackson, who designed to make plays like that. All I know is that when injuries come back, we absolutely need Darius Robinson to start on the defensive line. I know Justin Jones, I know Bilal Nichols, and Sean Murphy-Bunting were all good pickups in free agency. They really did not do anything for us defensively this game. Sean Murphy-Bunting had 2 penalties against him. Justin Jones had 1 fumble recovery that was caused by Roy Lopez. But beside that, our free agency pickups didn't do anything aside from Mack Wilson. Kaiser White had 11 tackles. Budda Baker had 10 tackles. Each of those 4 players with White, Baker, Wilson, and Zaven all had a tackle for loss. And with those young players, with Mack Wilson and Zaven Collins, our defense looks great. Budda Baker, Kaiser White are both almost 30 at this point. We have to do something to boost that defensive line. I don't know if it's finding a free agent or reaching out to other people with trade candidates, whether it be the Raiders, the Jets, or even, I don't know, someone that doesn't have a starting edge rusher playing right now. We have to make some sort of trades to boost that defensive line. We're not in this rebuilding phase anymore. We're in a comfortable team phase where we're in the middle of rebuilding, but in the middle of contending for a playoff spot. And with all the hype the Cardinals had going into this season, we have to make some changes or the team is going to fall apart every week. And I even mentioned this to one of my friends last week. The Cardinals led almost every game last year at halftime. How many of those games did we win? 4. And we saw it last year with the game against the Giants. We're up 28-0 at halftime. This was almost the exact same thing. And Kelvin Beachum has to step up his game. Because right now, there's no other tackle that we can pick up to boost our offensive line. all the decent tackles in the NFL right now are on a team as a backup role. So either we have to trade for an offensive tackle for that backup spot for just this season, or we roll with Kelvin Beachum and hopefully play around his blocking. But like I mentioned last week, I didn't feel like the Bills' defense was that great. They played better than I expected. I'll give them props to that. But still, I don't feel like the Cardinals should have lost this game. It was very winnable from start to finish. Even the last play, there was questionable calls like I had mentioned. Greg Dortch is our smallest player on the team. I'm not going to give him crap because he still had a fantastic game for the Cardinals. Why are we throwing him a 50-50 ball to win the game? He's 5'7". Why not throw it to McBride, Wilson, or Harrison? Any of those guys are over 6 foot. Why not throw them the ball? We've seen Wilson come down with 50-50 balls. We've seen Trey McBride come down with 50-50 balls. We've seen Harrison come down with 50-50 balls in college. Granted, college is different, but still, either one of those guys should have came down with a 50-50 ball to keep the game going. Why did we toss it to Greg Dortch? And that is not Drew Pletzing's play call. That was Kyler Murray's play decision right there. And I'll give him that because that is absolutely unexcusable. Now, I'll give him slack for the couple of plays previous, like with the James Conner run on 3rd and 10 and the James Conner run on 3rd and 6. That shouldn't have happened. Kyler Murray's a good quarterback. He should be running around making plays on the field for that. We saw it last year. He was making plays left and right to keep the game alive. But I don't know if it was just trust in Drew Petzing, like with his play call, or if it was just a new offense and he wanted to keep the run game going that was non-existent in the second half. I don't know. Because like I mentioned earlier, James Conner had a good first half rushing the ball. Trey Benson had a decent first half rushing the ball. But going into the second half, the run game wasn't there. Pass game was not there. Absolutely not. But when it comes down to that final drive with 0 timeouts and you have a minute left in the game, why run the ball? I don't understand why you want to run the ball. But enough with that whole rant about the game. The Cardinals still have a whole season ahead of them. Maybe something will change. Maybe something will change when Darius Robinson comes back. I don't know. Maybe there's going to be some trade that's going to happen later on in the future. We may never know until that gets there. But until right now, that's all that. I will give credit to the Cardinals, though. They did come out and play better than a lot of people expected them to. And I did predict that last week. I said the Cardinals are going to give the Bills a run for their money. I wanted them to win, and they should have won. But I will give them the credit and say that they played better than they did last season. And they played more to their potential that they have than a lot of people expected to. So I will give the Cardinals that. Kyler Murray, I will say, was his first opening season since 2 years ago, and not playing preseason with Marvin Harrison probably had some dysfunction right there because Kyler Murray, is trying to get off the rust. Marvin Harrison's trying to play his first actual NFL game since, I think, November of last year when he played Michigan. But you have to have some sort of scheme with Marvin Harrison in there. I know he hasn't played in a long time, but it's just inexcusable for your number 4 pick to have 3 targets the entire game. Anyways, enough of that rant. We're going to go on to talk about the Rams this next week. Now, we just got recent reports that Jonah Williams will be placed on IR and Kelvin Beachum will take over as the starting right tackle for the Arizona Cardinals until he is healthy. Now, talking about this upcoming Sunday home opener against the Rams, we are actually favored by sportsbooks to win the game by a minus 1.5 spread. For those of you who don't know what that means, it essentially means that the sportsbook have us to win by 2 points against the Rams. Now, the Rams have some notable injuries, obviously Puka Nacua being placed on IR, as well as 2 of their starting linemen and Steve Avila, their starting left tackle, with an MCL sprain, and Joe Noteboom, their second-string tackle, filling in the role for the suspended Alaric Jackson, also injured with an ankle sprain, is also being placed on IR. On top of that, their starting right guard, Kevin Dotson, is considered day-to-day with an ankle injury, and Rob Havenstein, who is also considered day-to-day with an ankle injury as well. This game will be a lot closer than a lot of people realize, but like I mentioned earlier, I don't believe the Cardinals will take a win from the Rams team. There's a chance with all the injuries that the Rams faced this last week from the Lions, the Cardinals could sneak away with a win. But if our defense played like the way it did in the second half of last week, the Rams offense is just going to have a field day. Cooper Kupp's going to be guarded by Sean Murphy-Bunting, and the run game is going to be the Rams' forte against our front seven the way things have been lately. Offensively, the Cardinals have to bounce back from last week, getting the pass game more involved in a much better secondary than last week, as well as a much better front seven than what we saw last week. If Jared Verse and Byron Young get put up against Beachum, they're going to be on the backfield all game long. Kobe Turner is also another big name to watch out for the front seven that could be a little concerning, especially with Evan Brown. But like I said, I'm more worrying about the edge rushers on the side that Beachum is on. Chances are Marvin Harrison Jr. will also get paired up against Tre'Davious White this week, and Wilson will get paired up against Kobe Durant for most of the game. So we could see more targets to Trey McBride with an inexperienced linebacker core that the Rams have, or even more of the middle field passes with James Conner or Trey Benson. Now I think the Rams will end up taking the game from us, like I had mentioned earlier, with a score of 31-28. But I do think the Cardinals will bounce back a little bit better from last week's loss. But with our front seven not generating enough pressure at the line of scrimmage, this team could face some serious issues. Hopefully, like I mentioned earlier, it's better since they're facing a depleted Rams offensive line with two of their starters now going on IR and their other starters facing some ankle injuries here and there. And maybe they can apply pressure to a not very mobile quarterback in Matthew Stafford. But if that pressure isn't there, the offense is going to have a field day against the Cardinals defense, like I mentioned earlier. Offensively, right tackle is going to be a huge liability now for the Cardinals offense. And it's just going to be something we have to deal with for the next 5 weeks. And it could create more issues as they face stronger pass rushes than they did last week against the Bills. But our pass game needs to be there and needs to be on point to have a successful game come Sunday. And I think that's going to end the podcast for this week for the Red Phantom podcast. I will let you know what the updates are on my accounts. Like I mentioned, I'm on Twitter, X, Instagram, YouTube, and I'll be posting some updates here and there regarding injuries, updates, whatever the case may be. Come check out the Instagram page. We have some stuff there. Check out the TikTok. We have some other stuff there too. But let's see what the Cardinals have in store for next Sunday. As for now, this is the Red Phantom podcast. Tuning out until next week.